As organized sports grew in popularity in America in the early 20th century, ever larger crowds meant creating ever larger places for fans to sit and watch the games. What began as simple wooden bleachers later became monstrosities like Yankee Stadium in New York City that had seats for 58,000 in 1923. But from the upper deck of a huge stadium, it's nearly impossible to identify the players, especially when they wear hats, like in baseball, or helmets, like in football. That resulted in players wearing numbers on the back of their jerseys. Then, to link players' names and numbers, the program was created and sold to fans. And that gave rise to the famous sales pitch, "Get your programs right here. Can't tell the players without a program." Today, of course, most sports fans watch games on television, and close-up camera shots allow them to read the names of players on the backs of their jerseys. But the original saying still holds true in many areas of life. You can't tell the players without a program. Nowhere is that more true than when interpreting the biblical book of Revelation, a highly graphic and symbolic vision of the characters and events of Earth's final days. If it is true that history is biography, and it is also true that eschatology is biography. Now, eschatology being the theological study of the coming end times. Therefore, we need to know who the key actors are on Earth's final stage in order to understand their roles in God's plan. Beginning in Genesis, God's story of redemption has been told through the lives of men and women, sometimes animals too. There have been men, women, and children of all ages. Some have been good, noble, and righteous, while others have been wicked and rebellious. There have been those who walked in step with God and others who walked in the opposite direction. But they all played a role. God stepped into the stream of fallen humanity to accomplish His redemptive purposes, and characters of all stripes are part of the story. In the final act in God's story of redemption that I'm telling you in a recap this summer at davidjeremiah.site.hall of prophecy, called Agents of the Apocalypse. Now going verse by verse through Revelation, David Jeremiah says he will describe the last chapters of Earth's history leading up to the new heaven and new earth, like in Revelation 21:1, through the actions of the agents, the main characters on history's final dramatic stage. Just like in the preceding sweep of history, some of the end-time characters are good and some are bad. They represent the age-old conflict between good and evil, righteousness and unrighteousness, that will find its culmination in the victory of the central character of them all, Jesus Christ. Who are the agents of the apocalypse? They begin with the Apostle John himself, who recorded the vision of the apocalypse while exiled on a rocky island. When the action of the 7-year tribulation begins, the agents take center stage to play their parts. These are a multitude of martyrs who are persecuted and killed for their faith in Christ. And keep in mind that all of this is true, and it will happen in reality, real life. It will be history. But we can look at it through the sense of this story, this action movie, because it's also the way that stories are. They're usually based on life events, and in this case, it's a true one. It just hasn't happened yet. Now, there are 2 witnesses who prophesy God's words on an earth overrun by evil. There are 144,000 Jewish evangelists who fan out across the earth to preach the gospel to the masses. There is the unholy trinity, the dragon, Satan, the beast from the sea, the Antichrist, and the beast from the earth, the false prophet. And finally, there is Christ himself, who takes on 3 roles in the end times: Victor, the returning commander king, ruler in the millennium, and judge, balancing the scales of justice for all eternity. As you may know from reading Revelation, it can be challenging to tell the players without a program. This month's Turning Points will introduce you to the agents of the apocalypse and help you to understand the graphic and symbolic imagery associated with each, just as John saw it. Now, I hope you'll tune into the upcoming Agents of the Apocalypse series on Turning Point Radio and television broadcasts, and watch for my forthcoming book, this is from David Jeremiah, of the same title. The apocalypse draws closer with each passing day. Don't be confused about what's happening. Understand the role each of God's agents will play in bringing the temporal days of planet Earth to a climatic conclusion.